Worm is a web serial by J.C. McCrae, also known as Wildbow. You can read Worm in its original format by visiting parahumans.wordpress.com or donate to Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. This story isn't intended for young or sensitive readers. Readers who are on the lookout for trigger warnings are advised to give Worm a pass. For a complete list, check the description for all of Worm's trigger warnings.
Welcome back to Dissecting Worm. As always, I am your host, Jacob, and joining me, as always, is Allan. Allan, welcome.
Hey-o.
And as always, to round out the trio, we have our good old boy, Michael.
Good old boy.
Good old boy, Michael. Making us sound good.
Mm-hmm.
At all of our pauses and our ums and our ahs and fact checking us when we're wrong.
I try.
We have Arc 10 of Worm.
Not just Arc 10, but I don't know if you know this, Jacob. We have Arc 10, and I have a cat in my lap.
Oh,
dang.
We are busy. We got a lot to get through then.
Day just keeps getting better.
We'll need the cat's opinion on the events of the arc.
I'll give you the play-by-play right now. She is currently nestling, and she's crawling up me towards the microphone, and she is loafed on a vertical slope. It's adorable. This is the kind of content that audio listeners definitely enjoy.
All right. Getting into Arc 10 as we attempt to adapt this arc for television in our continuation of this Worm television show we are theorizing. We started season 2 last episode with Arc 9, kind of gotten a fun little arc with the wards, fun little cold open episode really. And now we sort of get to dive back into our familiar cast of characters. And this is an interesting arc. I think there's a lot we can either remove or move around. There's a lot we can do. We can play around with some of these scenes and dynamics. So I think we're going to have some fun stuff to talk about. As always, let's go ahead and kind of start with our cold open, if you will. And I had some interesting thoughts, but I'll defer to you. Have you put any thought into how this particular episode should open?
So in my head, I got no idea. Jacob, you kick us off.
All right. Well, I had a fun thought. So in the arc, the way it plays out is we get the sort of because Arc 9 ends and Shadowstalker is essentially trapped by the Undersiders, right? And then Arc 10 starts. We get our little 3 days earlier. They catch us up to where we are. I had this idea of sort of changing this just slightly, which is Arc 9 ending with not a definitive capture of Shadowstalker, but that's the implication, right? She's not knocked unconscious or anything right away. We save that, and let me follow my train of thought. We're going to come back to it. Don't worry.
I think I know where you're going, and I've had similar thoughts, but not for the beginning necessarily. But I like where you're going.
All right, let me finish. Then fill in my blanks here.
Hit me with it.
So then, for the cold open for Arc 10 or episode, Arc 10, episode 2 of season 2, what is going to get confusing, we'll just call it Arc 10 because that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
The cold open here, and again, I'm going to pause again just to say we keep using the term cold open. It's not really a cold open. We know that. It's just helping us organize our trains of thought. As you can tell, we're all over the place. I'm speaking to everybody who's listening here. It's not actually a cold open. This isn't The Office, but you get the idea. Okay, put it in the comments if you're angry. I understand. Anyway, so Arc 10 would open with, and I would shorten the scene a bit, Shadow Stalker coming back to the PRT headquarters with the
Yes.
Undersiders in tow. And the cold open is through when Weld calls out the trap. And then at that point, title screen, whatever you want to do, then we can cut back 3 days prior, build up that first part, do with that what we want through the full capture, and we see what happened to Shadow Stalker with Regent taking over and all that kind of stuff. And then we can jump back to the trap. And now there's kind of context there. So we're sort of, the idea being that for the audience, hiding that reveal of Regent's control over Shadow Stalker until after the trap is sprung, or rather not sprung.
Yeah. To go off of that, I think this is a very short recovery chapter to begin with. This is a 1 episode arc.
Yeah.
And honestly, the 1 episode arc, and it's probably a shorter episode than most. I think I like your idea. I would even go off of potentially, if there was a really good writer, in charge of this, we'd go back and forth with the timeline.
What are you saying?
I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'd go back and forth with the timeline, and I like your idea of like kind of leaving it a mystery. My first thought was originally that you essentially have the moment when Shadow Stalker gets out of the room, and everybody freaks out, and Taylor's like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, and then of course it's Alec, and like, "Gotcha, dork." But have that be the moment where like they put Shadow Stalker in the room with Alec. It sounds really bad in there. And then all of a sudden, Shadow Stalker's out, and we cut, and then you're at the PRT building. We're like,
oh, okay, I gotcha.
But we'd be going back and forth, kind of all over the place with the events.
Yeah.
Where you'd have essentially one timeline would be them catching Shadow Stalker and turning her, and the other half would be ongoing the invasion of the PRT building. But I like yours better. It's more simple, and I think cuts out a lot of the unnecessary explanations that we would have to do in order to get them to the PRT building.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to cut down, was getting to the building. I feel like you can probably just get there and the audience would be fine, especially if your scapegoat is, oh, Shadow Stalker just took him there, like.
Yeah. I mean, I'm even okay with the PRT, guys showing up and them unloading, the knocked out team, knocked out Undersiders. But, I already have my gripes with like, why the heck are the PRT listening to, the PRT officers listening to Shadow Stalker?
Right.
Known juvie Shadow Stalker.
Yeah.
So like skipping over that is, easier than explaining it for sure. I think that's a great move. I think it leaves it in more of a mystery. Yeah, I think you do that, and you also have the capture and the torture of Shadow Stalker somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important part.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think you could put that in the in that like flashback 3 days. You could build up do the little bit of you know flashback scenes, building up the Undersiders, getting them kind of back in touch with each other. This is the first time we've really seen them this season, so give them their moments there, and then you can skip ahead to the confrontation with Shadowstalker in the alley, resolve that. Bringing her back, Regent taking control. You can still do all of that and keep all of that there, and then jump forward again. Back to the
Yeah.
back
So
to the
in
headquarters.
terms of things we're getting rid of, because I do think that cutting stuff is important thing to do here.
Yeah, there's some room for it for sure.
Here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking like you cut out the explanation. You cut out essentially the second Shadowstalker fight. There's no her capturing the Undersiders. That's gone.
Oh yeah,
I'm okay with that.
Yep.
We'll get back to it, but I think you cut out the bitch subplot here.
Right. We will come back to that, but yep, I agree.
And you just rearrange the opening of them dragging in, torturing Shadowstalker. But I think when Shadowstalker gets loose and is under control of Alec, I don't think we reveal that it's Alec still. I think we keep that mystery going of like, okay, so Shadowstalker caught them, but it's a trap.
Mm-hmm.
But they did get Shadowstalker, but Shadowstalker got loose, and then you're flashing back. Oh, they're fighting, and then finally we get to the end point of like Shadowstalker maybe acting a bit weird, like the moment where Regent lets Shadowstalker up a bit,
right,
and then we get to the end, where lets Shadowstalker go, and that's kind of the reveal.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, this is what Regent can do.
Yeah, I think you could play around with that.
And maybe we even cut into the room at one point in time as like an explanation later on. Because I think it would be really interesting to show essentially he has to sit there and, link up all their nerves together. So,
yeah,
forcing, every single nerve in the body to judder and move, one at a time until he's got a complete puppet suit going. I think would be really interesting to get a few glimpses into that.
Yeah, well, I mean, since we're kind of on that note, just to jump to Alec's interlude, because I think it's kind of relevant that we talk about it here. I think you can have a lot of fun with how you do that reveal. A lot of really clever ways to expand on Alec's control. I think one way you do it would be really fun. Would be his whole "I'm letting you go now," and the audience thinks that he does. And we get Shadowstalker running away. He's got the little thing, I can take control, don't come back, yada yada. Shadowstalker leaves, and we follow her. And as we follow her, she's talking to herself, but it's really Alex speaking through her as he does in the book. But it doesn't. It sounds off, but you're not quite sure why, right? He says this whole thing about how I like being invisible. Nobody notices me, yada yada, and you can play it off as her talking to herself, and then as the scene gets worse and worse, and we can kind of talk about how far we really want to go, or that kind of thing, how we want to play around with that. We get to the point at the end where Alec addresses her directly, through her own mouth, and then all you need is a subtle cut back to Alec just lying on the couch, back in their hideout, smiling, something simple like that. And you just sort of sell that. Oh shit, he didn't let her go. Like, you can really punch.
That's great.
Yeah. You can hit that really hard. I mean, I'm thinking you've got musical cues. I know Michael's already working on that. You just get a good musical
Of
cue
course.
going.
Of course. Of course. Taking
yeah,
notes.
really sort of
Taking
selling
notes.
that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I like that setup a lot. I like that reveal a lot because I like it being. I do think this should be an an Alec episode kind of. But I
He
think
definitely should have some. Yeah.
having it be almost a retrospectively good Alec episode.
Mhm.
One of those episodes where when you finish the episode, you go, "Oh my god." And you rewatch the episode immediately just to watch Alec the entire episode.
Yep. Exactly.
I think that's genius.
And this is one
Um,
of those times we've talked before, and this really isn't that prudent to the type of content we're really doing here. But we've talked before about like the type of medium we'd want the show to be in, and I think we both agree that this show would just be visually beautiful in some really crisp animation. You know, um,
mhm.
Arcane, Castlevania. We both just recently watched Blue Eye Samurai, which was excellent.
Ooh,
Just
yeah. Ooh.
something like that. Worm would just excel. But
Mhm.
I would also say that it's moments like this where I'm like, ooh, but man, would I just love to see live action actors work through this type of writing where you would have, the actress playing Shadowstalker and the actor playing Alec, their subtle ability to change that character. Where, like you said, you do go back and you rewatch and you're like, oh, and you're picking up on these cues. Really you can't beat a live action performance there. And that's where I'm like resting. Like, dang it, what would work better in the long run? I don't know. It's hard, but it'd be really fun to see an actor's portrayal of those characters.
Yeah.
But that's a story and a decision for another time when we have
Man.
permission and budgets.
It'll be a hard decision when, the studios are just throwing like, "Hey,
Aye,
we
right.
want you." You've got so many options to pick from. Do you want to do it live action? Do you want to do it, with us? Do you want to do it with us over here? We'll do it animated. And you're just like, "Ah, man, I don't know who to choose."
I'd love to know what Wildbow would want. Like, I'm so curious. I wonder what his like ideal format is for any
Yeah,
sort of
once
adaptation.
again, Wildbow, you coward.
Come on.
Come at me.
Anytime, you're welcome.
I want you to get on this podcast and tell me how wrong I am to my face.
Yes.
I dare you. I double dare
and
you.
then we will correct your pronunciations.
Yes.
As we do.
Marquee.
Oh man. All right. Well, that's good. Yeah, I do
okay.
like that. I agree. I think we'll pump up region a bit in this episode as well.
So I think that's great. I think that's a great front to back. That interlude, the Alec interlude finishing. We've talked about before with the Dinah subplot, how we're kind of getting rid of that. I think this is an interesting part we need to get to, which is when looking forward, when does the reveal of Coil and Dinah show up?
Right.
And like, when do her powers kind of get revealed? When does Coil get revealed as the boss? We still don't have that nailed down per se, and I think that's something we probably need to do before we get to the end of the Slaughterhouse. So season 2, by the end of season 2, we need to have that figured out. It really is a kind of a background issue now, but like I said, we need to get that hammered out, especially as I'll eventually catch up and be writing this arc. So I think for now, just as a placeholder, Tattletale just kind of talks about the fact that Slaughterhouse is in town or something like that, and that she got a call from their boss that Jack Slash will end the world or something like that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that as just sort of a placeholder.
I know that's really, really ambiguous for now, but like
Yeah.
just as a placeholder, because she knows it's Coil, she gets,
Mhm.
the reveal that, hey, Jack Slash is going to end the world if you see him kill on sight. And then she relays that to the Undersiders.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're both on the same page of sort of shifting around the Coil reveal a bit just to make it a little bit more impactful. So we'll definitely have to sort of rework a few of these scenes. Because I mean,
Yeah.
even beyond Jack Slash, we've got the divvying up of the territories, um, and moving on from here. As I've read ahead a little bit, there's more we'd have to work through there. So maybe this is a good time for the reveal, or maybe it's the next episode. It's kind of hard to say. That we will play around with it a little bit for sure. But yeah, for now,
Yeah. I mean, this could be
that's
the moment
fine.
where, like, hey, they bring in the data. This is our moment to be like, hey, we got the data. Here it is. Coil
Yeah,
finally, they give it to Coil directly finally.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and maybe we don't reveal the Dinah angle yet. We just reveal that Coil exists and
Mhm.
that he has it on good authority that Jack Slash is coming into town and they need to kill on sight because
Yeah.
he's destined to end the world. Which I think is a great, a great ticking time bomb to place in the room
Mhm.
of like, hey, Jack Slash is, has this prophecy essentially.
Mhm.
Um, don't know when, but we need to just be mindful of that.
Yeah. I think it's also worth noting too that the reveal should come probably sooner rather than later, just because just to give our characters the intelligence they deserve. At this point in the story, there's really not another option for who's pulling the strings. That unless you're going to pull some wild like, oh, it was her dad the whole time, or it was Mr. Gladly or something, like that.
Yeah.
Then like, because Kaiser's dead, so it's not him, and it's not Fault Line's crew. Like, nothing else makes sense, even for our characters. Like, the audience knows at this point that it's Coil, but even for our characters, like, they would figure it out pretty soon once they kind of piece it all together. So I think not delaying the reveal too far would be important, just
I mean,
so
this
that
could be a moment where they're downloading stuff. Skitter
Mhm,
sees that they're downloading. Uh, maybe Skitter puts it together and
mhm,
just turns to Lisa at one point and goes, "Hey, level with me.
mhm,
It's Coil, isn't it?"
mhm.
And Lisa goes, like, "Yep, you got it." Like, and she,
Yeah, I mean,
kind
you
of the
could even
understanding that like Lisa's always known,
yeah,
obviously, and
yeah,
Taylor doesn't fault her for knowing
yeah,
because that's number one, that's her job, and number two, that's her power. So like,
yeah.
it's sort of expected. Um, but the friendship of like, hey, Lisa's not about to bullshit you when you do figure it out.
Right, right. I mean, you could even give Lisa a moment here, right? And just sort of have her uh not betray Coil, but just sort of call an audible, and whatever you want to give her, catch wind of Jack Slash or the Slaughterhouse Nine or something else, where she just says, you know, it's time. Enough in the shadows. Because especially thinking here that we want to get to divvying up the territories. Um,
Yeah.
so they do need to meet, I guess, at some point, really. So
I mean, I think
maybe
this is
Lisa just
this is
sort
a
of
good time. This is a good
yeah.
time.
So then she's like, you know what? Follow me. We got to pay the boss a visit. Something like that.
Yeah. Especially she's like, I saw what was on here. We need to talk to the boss about this.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and this is a great time for the boss being like, yeah, I'm about to divvy up the territory anyway. It makes sense that I would reveal my cards. So,
hmm and it's
um,
it's oh, man, I'm thinking a little maybe too far in the future here,
no,
but
no, no,
this would
no.
maybe also
We've
be a
established this is a spoiler podcast at this point. We've got to think long term. Hit me with it.
And we'll put it in the
Hit me.
we'll put it in the beginning again. Yeah, we're spoiling some stuff. So this could also be an interesting time where for rewatchers would pick up on this, but maybe first time watching is a little subtle, where maybe Coyle's caught a bit off guard and his power doesn't catch this Lisa coming in. So maybe he's caught a little off guard and tries to regain control of the situation a bit. Just as I'm such a sucker for foreshadowing. It's like if my job for scripts was just here's Jacob, here's the script, foreshadow all the big events for us, then that would be happy. Make that my job. It'd be amazing. And I love well done foreshadowing. I think all reveals should feel earned in that way. So I think little subtleties like that, where we see Coyle's power falter a bit, where he's not prepared for a certain event, and somebody like Lisa, as another thinker, is that type of power that can foil that. Which I don't know if this is actually fully explained, or this was just always my understanding, which was part of why Coyle bought her service, like hired her, was because he wanted her on his side as opposed to somebody who could accidentally interfere with his plans, just because of the type of power she has. So might be just a spot for something like that. Just nothing so obvious, but a little understanding.
We've talked about taking away some aspects of villains just to in the adaptation. If there's one that I could do for Coyle, it would be make him less of a pedophile.
Yeah. I do feel I kind of agree. I don't think he needs to be at all in order for his control over Dinah to feel, creepy on its own. Like, I think it's going to be impossible to avoid those undertones and similarities just from people who are watching and are going to read into things. But we absolutely do not need to fuel that fire in any way. I agree. I'm fine with that. He's a villain enough as it is, and I think he has that fun villain dynamic we've talked about before, both here and on the Brockton Bay Book Club podcast. We've talked about how Coyle sort of has that. Oh well, would it be so bad if he took over? I mean, he seems like he's got a good plan for the city. He's got that Lex Luthor, Doctor Doom sort of. Oh, but maybe he could be a good ruler. He's evil, but nobody questions whether or not Lex Luthor is a villain or Doctor Doom's a villain. We all very clearly evil, but they sort of still fill that fun role of antagonist. So I would much rather him sit in that category than Hannibal Lecter or something.
Yeah, I think it's a great example of that oftentimes these guys are their undoings, where if only they weren't, fascists, then
right.
then if only you weren't a raging dickhead about it, then you probably would have gotten away with it. But that is sort of essential to your personality and what you believe. So it is going to come bite you in the ass. And in this case, Coyle has that, Kaiser has that. All those things come back to bite you. And that's even if what you're doing is, I don't know, good.
Yeah.
Whatever your justification for it is.
Exactly. Especially because we do get the really creepy serial killer villains in this season. We're going to meet them real soon. We don't need every villain to fill that role. So we'll get our fair share of creeps very soon.
I think establishing Coyle as the subtler evil, where okay, he does do bank robberies, but he is improving the city. how would you handle this very complicated, he does certain bad things and certain good things. How do you fall on your opinion of him?
We interrupt our scheduled program to bring you a word from our sponsor, Zencastr, a one-stop shop for all your podcasting needs. When we first started this podcast, we knew we needed a service that would let us record remotely. After doing some research, Zencastr was the obvious choice. We started using Zencastr and never looked back. It's super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. All you do is log in, invite people to join your room, and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. You can record studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. You can rest easy even if you have an unstable connection, knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality. We do all our recording in Zencastr, and when the episode is ready, we can distribute it to all major podcast platforms. Zencastr has made podcasting so much easier with its all-in-one podcasting platform and tools. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code Brocktonbaybc, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. That's zencastr.com/pricing and use our code Brocktonbaybc. And now back to our scheduled programming.
Working our way kind of back to front because there is a bigger thing that like I touched on before, and we'll get back to. What do we do with the dragon interlude?
Yeah, so I guess this sort of depends on how much we want to rework the fight scene, which I imagine we'll probably want to rework it a little bit. But in my eyes, like assuming we didn't touch it at all, you would put the dragon interlude maybe right after the fight. You get the weird ending with dragon. I can anticipate we're going to change this a bit, but get dragon's ending to the fight, and then the fight resolves, calm down, scene change, transition to her booting up, and then just you can play out the interlude. I think it'd be really fun. I really like this interlude this early on in the our season 2 because we get a glimpse at the birdcage. We get our birdcage bros. We get a glimpse at Armmaster sitting there. So it's sort of like we're 2 episodes in now, and we're kind of rounding out the that's where everybody is that we love from season 1. Yeah. So I like that it exists.
I do like that it exists. I like that it kind of goes all over the place, but through one person's POV.
Oh yeah.
My notes in this entirely are, I don't know what to do with this chapter. I don't want to reveal Dragon this early. I don't want to reveal Amy's parentage this early. Like, I think maybe we reveal what Colin is up to.
Mm-hmm.
And if we really want to look at the bird cage, this is where we have Dragon kill Bakuda. Or not Dragon, Lung.
Oh, this is where I have Lung kill Bakuda?
We have, because we had Lung get in the fight.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, Lung is alive.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's like, that's our cut is we just, back of his head, him going down the chute.
Right.
Let out into the bird cage.
Right.
It's him. And all of a sudden, he is at the door of Bakuda's area.
Mm-hmm.
And, Bakuda's like, whoa, what are you doing down here? And it's like, took a while for me to heal. But, essentially I'm back and I need to build a reputation again.
Yeah.
I
don't dislike that at all. I think that would work pretty well. I'm definitely fine hiding the Panacea reveal. You can, we could totally give like a little subtle, very vague, how's your daughter, that kind of thing. Or, even vaguer than that if you want. But yeah, definitely fine hiding that. I'm okay revealing Dragon as an AI here, only because, and I'm down to change this, but just right now in my mind, I can't think of a good time later to reveal it. I've changed my mind. I got the sign out in front of me. Feel free to change it. I'm open to
My
change.
thought,
Mhm.
my thought would be all the way when we got to deal with either dealing with Defiant and Dragon when they're
Mhm.
a team,
Mhm.
way later, or when we deal with the Dragon Slayers.
Right. Yeah, that would make the most sense for sure. Um, coughing up a lung here. Um,
A lung.
oh, a
Long.
lung. I'm coughing up a
Nice.
lung, and you go, and I'm coughing up a marquee.
Uh,
Yeah. So that definitely works. I'm fine putting a pin on that. I'm fine moving that around, depending on how we sort of want to structure Dragon's character arc as a whole, and kind of what makes
yeah.
sense there. Because I think a lot of her character really begins to shine once you realize that she's AI. Um, a lot of pieces start to fall into place. So I wouldn't want to delay that too much because I think there's a lot of fun sort of POV that happens with that mindset. But I'm definitely
Yeah.
fine. I'm definitely fine moving it around if we come up with a good place where that works better.
I think I want to say there's some point later where it's a Defiant chapter. I don't think it's as
Mhm.
far because I'm thinking like all the way at like 20.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but I believe in like 16, Defiant finds out that Dragon is an AI.
Oh, well,
I
yeah.
don't
So
think,
if that's the case, uh, that would work really well, very very
yeah,
well.
because that's after the Slaughterhouse Nine,
That would be
and
after.
then honestly, we have a whole like two. Well, is
I'm
it
looking through
two
it right
Coil
now,
arcs?
actually. Yeah, we got
Yeah, so
Coil arcs.
two arcs of Coil.
Yeah, so it is. You're right. It is. It's in arc 16, Defiance interlude. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. So actually,
that,
you know what? I'm fine with that. I think that would probably work really well. So we'll put a pin in that. We'll revisit that for sure. Because yeah, that could work really well. Saving that for that point,
yeah.
especially
Because
if
that's another
or
thing. You got to make it rewatchable. You're watching this.
exactly,
Were there ever tells? Did you know?
exactly.
Other thing, I'm gonna pull out here. Um, I don't like the biocomputer lizards for Dragon. I've never liked them. I think we just ditch those.
I'm
I
fine.
get that
I'm
there's
fine
a
with that.
reasoning behind them. They always
Nope.
felt like a retcon to me.
I'm fine with that. Cut the lizards.
I think that just makes something that's a little bit too much exposition that we need to talk about later. Instead, it's like, yes, it was a robot that Dragon was remotely piloting. That's fine. We get that.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think, you know what, I think it even works better with the fight, because the way it's written, Alec goes to like try to throw off Dragon in the power suit, and he's like, I can't. I feel somebody in there, but I can't. Well, just make it that he can't, and they sort of realize that, oh, she's not actually in there, and
yeah,
nobody's
it's just
going to think
I can't.
AI.
Why? Like, why can't you, Alec? Now you
Yeah,
can't do stuff all of a sudden. They're like,
yeah,
well, yeah, not if it's a fucking remote control. Not if it's a
yeah.
drone.
Right.
Like,
And you're gonna absolutely you're selling me on this. Just I'm talking through it. Because you're gonna absolutely send people just down the trail like, oh, she doesn't actually go anywhere. She just sends out robots that she controls. She's holed up in a base somewhere, and that's
I
gonna
mean,
be
which is
where everyone.
perfect
Yeah,
because Colin immediately goes like, oh yeah, sorry about your agoraphobia.
yeah, exactly. It writes itself. No, that's perfect. I like that. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sold. We're good.
Yeah,
I'm
and
sold here.
especially on the tail of like we just had the big Leviathan fight, and then he's kind of like reminiscing about like, oh yeah, like when Leviathan sunk Newfoundland,
Yeah, you're right.
and you kind of never left your apartment after that.
Yeah,
Understandable.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
No, that works. Yeah. Okay. So I like that. I like how we sort of are structuring Dragon there.
Yeah.
There's only two
The
other
thing
things that
about
I had. Or go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So one is wherever we do put the what I'll just call the kidnapping of Shadowstalker, like how it
Mhm.
opens in the story, the dragging, kind of going through the abandoned building and like making sure the room's clear. I think we
Mhm.
need to make that more immediate and urgent. That
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this is something we're trying to do quickly, and also it does give it the feeling of a kidnapping. This isn't just like, oh, like, hey, and then we realize like, oh, they're carefully tiptoeing. No, I think this needs to be borderline dragging by the hair into the
Mhm.
room so they can torture her. Like,
Mhm.
this is about to be brutal. It needs to feel up to that, kind of brutal too.
Mhm.
Like, horror movie style, it just, we cut it's Shadow Stalker's limp body, and the two of them are like dragging her across the floor in this flickering lights abandoned building, tying her to a chair with electrical wire, and then leaving her in the room with Alec to some very suspect noises coming from that room.
Mhm.
I said it before, while it isn't actually rape, I think the vibes with Alec being alone in the room with her should be very rapey because he is about to use her body without her permission.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's very analogous, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It
No,
should be a
it's a
very
very.
uncomfortable
I was gonna
setup.
say, yeah, very very uncomfortable. It should absolutely elicit that.
Yeah. Um, and rightly so when we get to the end of the episode when you're like, oh yeah, that he, probably would have maybe like,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
kind of a terrible
I mean,
person.
you get. I was gonna say it's a really big character moment for Alec because we sort of put him into the spotlight. He gets an episode to shine. It's sort of the episode where everybody's like, "Oh man, I didn't really care about that guy in season 1, but he's kind of cool. Oh, yeah, that's neat." He gets his moment and then at the end it's just this charade that he plays. Uh and we see him for who he is, which is I mean, he's a pretty twisted guy. And
Yeah.
obviously the text goes into more detail that we don't need or really can't put on screen in the same way. But you can show that, and it's going to be a really uncomfortable scene for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it needs to be pretty strong.
Yeah. All right. Before I go into my big one, do you have anything else you were going to change up?
Not too much to change. I do. I'm fine. Sort of. If this really isn't something that we would do too much for script purposes because this is more action. You would just be like, the action scene happens here. I'm fine, sort of shortening and condensing some of these action scenes a bit. I don't think that's too important. I would like to see just to give a little bit of growth from the first episode. It'd be nice to see Weld have the respect of have the respect of the wards a bit in the fight, where he is issuing commands and they're fighting and they're sort of working together because they kind of do in that fight, and it's a nice little bit of not closure because their stories aren't done, but in terms of like that first arc, right? We talked about or arc 9, right? We talked about how the wards sort of start the episode with not respecting Weld at all, and then the episode ends with a few of them kind of respecting him a bit. And it'd be nice to sort
Mhm.
of cap that off with seeing them in action now, especially because we saw them in action in previous episodes. They didn't fight that well. The Travelers kicked their ass. So now in this episode, maybe they have it a bit more together. So I would want to sort of highlight that a bit, um,
Yeah.
in some way. And there's a million different ways you could really kind of write that. And then
Yeah.
the last
I
big
talk
thing I
about
was going to talk. Oh yeah, do you
No,
want
no,
to
no,
build
no.
off
I
of
was going
that?
to say within just the word section because we really didn't touch on the fight, and I don't think much needs to be touched on it.
Yeah,
I mentioned
yeah,
it before in the other one, but I think you need to hurry it up through the kid win guns. I don't like how long they spend talking about that and
yeah. No,
testing
that's
them out.
fine.
I
Yeah,
think that needs to be like a 10-second sequence right there where they're just like, this one, no, this one, and then just Imp just blows the door open. And we're like, that one.
No, I mean that's you could easily just make it a bit there, right? Where they're holding up guns and Tattletale is all like, no, kind of quickly going through them, and then Imp just grabs one behind their back and just blows open the door. Just make it a little bit, make it a little joke. No, that's great. And then the only other thing I had that I wanted to talk about that I think we'll mention, but I don't know if you have anything else, was Bitch's character and arc here, which I know we've kind of talked about off mic about.
That was going to be my big thing there.
Okay, well go ahead, lead us off.
Yeah, before I forget, because we're going to go into that, I want to go back to Dragon because I'm going to forget this note if I don't say it now. We've got to figure out how to frame Dragon's POV, whether it's like, I don't know, security cameras or something.
Right. Right.
I also think having a conversation between her and Colin about outing people is important, because Colin had information, and while he was there, outed Taylor, essentially.
Right.
And Dragon quickly figures out who Taylor is.
Yep.
And I think we could show just like a computer screen information. Like, it doesn't even have to say anything. Computer screen information, Taylor matching it up to, Skitter pulled up right next to her. Like, and then you get the impression that like Dragon has figured it out so freaking fast.
Yeah.
Pulling up the emails, all that jazz,
Yep.
But Dragon doesn't out her.
Yep.
And I think that's like having her and Colin have a conversation about essentially what he did wrong and maybe being a little bit remorseful, and Dragon kind of taking that to heart, because we've seen Dragon be sympathetic before with our canary interlude that we threw in. And I think here's another example of like, yeah, Dragon knows, but Dragon doesn't say out of respect for people. Because it would be so easy for her to do that, but she doesn't. And she maybe doesn't in this case because of some human growth, because of her interaction with Colin, perhaps, and the fact that she's a good soul.
No, I do like that. Yeah.
Having them talk about that together would be good. But back to what you were leading me into. I think that we need to resolve the bitch drama back at the Leviathan chapters. We're having a big issue with trying to figure out what makes Taylor quit the Undersiders right before the Leviathan fight and her relationship with them. I think we need to cut Bitch and her bitchiness from this chapter. I think that she doesn't need to betray Taylor. I think none of that. I think she is on board Team Taylor all the way. And I think that starts with the fact that Taylor, right before the Leviathan fight, reveals that she was going to betray the team. This is in an attempt to be like more honest and open, but of course, the team does not take kindly to that. And that leads to this big argument of like, she's like, you don't understand, like, I didn't want to be a villain. I still don't want to be a villain, but I do want to be with you guys, and I do want to do some good in the city. That's why I like am the way I am. And I think the real interesting thing here would be Lisa, of course, already knows. Bitch is hurt, and like, especially after her and Taylor have had this, this character development together. So she storms off. Alec is like, well, I appreciate you telling me. It's kind of fucked up, but, whatever. Or maybe he also gets upset. Maybe him and Gru are both like, what the fuck? And like, we don't want to fucking look at you. So they leave with Bitch as well. Then you have the climactic moment where Bitch comes back and saves the day and, sacrifices her dogs to attack Lug to save Taylor. I think that's a big moment because it pays off the relationship that we've had with Taylor this whole time, and it overcomes the fact that Taylor was going to be a traitor.
Right.
That is the resolution of that bitch drama right there. No more Bitch and Taylor are on good terms. The relationship only grows from here. Then what we do is we get to the hospital scene where Taylor's, having the big confrontation with Armsmaster, and Armsmaster, in a pathetic attempt to misdirect, the attention from him, being a little bitch, throws out that, hey, Skitter was going to betray the Undersiders, to which all of them just kind of fold their arms and go, we know. She, once an Undersider, always an Undersider.
Yeah.
And, and that's Gru saying that. And Alec is right there with him. And they still go off like they're that is essentially like, hey, we're cool.
Right.
It's rough, but we knew. We still get to have the Taylor's undecided. She didn't want to be a villain. She never wanted to be a villain. She still has the conversation with Lisa where it's like, do you still want to do this? And she's like, I haven't made up my mind yet. Or, I've got an idea or something. And then we also still get to have potentially the flashback explanation in this, which I actually think would be good for a cold open. I think would be great for a cold open on this episode where Taylor comes back to the hideout, and Gru is like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" She came back with Lisa. Bitch is like, "Hey Taylor, sup?" Daps up. Alec is like, "Yo, dork, what's happening?" Daps up. And Lisa's like, "All right, well, it's everybody against you, Gru." And Gru's like, oh, so this is just how things work now? Like, I don't get a say? And it's like, well, you do get a say, but it means nothing, so fuck off.
Yeah.
And so he's the only one that has the contention with Taylor now. Alec's easy to forgive. He's like, hey, if you're in, you're in. That's all I need to know. She's already, gutted herself to you. And also, we can still have the whole, dude, nobody can act that stupid and goofy around each other, without it being real. Like, she's a terrible liar. I think you have all that. It builds this contention between Gru and Taylor, which I think is a great interpersonal relationship that we need to hold on to and, keep going as it will in the story. And also kind of has that leadership dynamic that we keep leaning towards Taylor and away from Gru, which I think is really important. At that point, you could have that at the beginning where it's like, hey, and they're like, cool, okay, well, Taylor's on board now. What is our next move? And Lisa and Taylor kind of give each other a look and they go, well, we have an idea. Cut to them captured in the PRT.
Okay.
Or you put that before any scene. I think, you could open with them being captured by the PRT. It's a trap. Then cut to her coming to talk to the team. Hey, I have an idea. And then the idea is immediately them dragging the body down the hall to torture.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, you're right. It works kind of either way. That's great. No,
we had this idea. Hear me out. That person I really, really fucking hate. And how y'all tried to convince me before that I didn't need to get revenge.
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, they're a viable target now, so we can do a war crime.
No, I'm fully on board. We talked kind of briefly about this before the episode. So yeah, I completely agree. I really like that change a lot. I really like the idea of switching up everything pre-Leviathan, making that motivation a little bit different. And I like the idea because you still can get the hospital scene. Because really, Taylor leaves, Leviathan fight happens. She's basically unconscious when Bitch saves her. She doesn't really know how the Undersiders have processed her betrayal. So you still have that emotional moment in the hospital. And I like the idea of Bitch being the one to tell Armsmaster, like, we know, buddy. Okay, you haven't broken us up. And
do you have Bitch say it, or do you have Alec say it? So that Gru is the only one who hasn't essentially voiced positivity.
Right. Oh, I like that actually.
Because Bitch has saved her, so they're cool. And then Alec comes in and is like, bro, Like
I was
we
going to say,
already knew.
I like it with Alec. You're right. Because you can give him a really sassy, sarcastic line like, hey, dumbass,
Yeah.
we know. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. I was gonna say like, hey, we want to be a boo. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
you big fucking nerd.
Yeah. Yeah. So it still works. You still get that beat, that emotional beat there. And then I think that fixes this arc a bit. I think that cleans that up a bit. You just you eliminate the whole contention here, which I don't think is necessary. Especially with them about to kind of go off in separate directions for a bit, with their own territories in a way. I don't think you need to, like, that's sort of the next chapter of their group's dynamic. So it's important to kind of resolve the previous chapter, if you will.
Yeah. I think having one subplot, which is, Gru and Taylor have
there's still some
have
tension
issue.
There. Yeah.
Especially since Gru is kind of the leader.
Right.
Sort of. I think that's a good dynamic to leave off on.
Yeah. No, I agree.
All right.
Well, I think that
we're hitting that hour mark.
I know, it's good timing. I think we've kind of hit everything we wanted to touch on.
Yeah,
pretty good episode. I think it'll flesh out into a decent episode. I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe add some stuff or maybe combine some stuff from other arcs. We'll see, but definitely enough here to fill out probably an episode at the most. But let us know, as always. We love interacting with anybody on this topic, and there's not enough conversation on it, as we have said many times. So what do you think? We've kind of put through some pretty big changes and big ideas here. We've moved around a lot of moments, some beats, some character arcs. We've erased some things. We've added some things. So please let us know. Reach out to us. Leave a comment. Please let us know on any of our social media platforms what you think of our changes, how you think this is progressing, and tell us why we're wrong, and we'll tell you why we're right, because we're right, obviously, every time. Thank you, Allan, as always.
Oh, thank you, Jacob,
joining me once again, and thank you, Michael, for making us sound good.
No problem,
my boy.
And until next episode, which will be the first half of Arc 11, the numbered chapters, so 1 through 8, we'll be breaking that down, taking a look at the first half of that arc. Keep reading Worm. Fancy outro I haven't perfected yet, and hit us with a cool beat, Michael.
Thank you so much for listening. Read along with us at parahumans.wordpress.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What did you love? What did you hate? Anything you think we missed, etc., as long as it's kind. If you'd like to get in touch, you can find us on Twitter, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, and Reddit at Brocktonbaybc, or click the link in the description.
Did we say something that you didn't agree with, that you can't just put into words on a message board or a forum or a YouTube comment? Well, now you can call us. We have a voicemail. You can call us at 980-999-0438 and let us know with your words what we said wrong.
If you'd like to fight me on the podcast, go ahead and leave a voicemail at 980-999-0438. Call in with your comment, leave your cape name, and which one of us you're going to call out on this podcast. We'd love to hear from you and love to engage with you on the podcast.
Give us some ideas on how you would adapt Worm, or just thoughts on the story in general, and your voicemail might be featured on one of our episodes. Again, that's 980-999-0438. Leave your cape name and your thoughts, and stay tuned.